Welcome to the Arlington Catholic Herald podcast. We've got stories you won't find anywhere else. I'm Mary Staccara Lopez, Social Media Coordinator. On the phone today is Father John O'Connor, a Franciscan Fr and pastor of St. Francis of Assisi Church in Triangle. Thanks for joining us today, Father.
You're very welcome. Good to be with you.
Well, the Feast of St. Francis is October 4th, and it's a tradition at many parishes, including your own, to bless the animals this week. Can you tell us how this tradition got started?
Well, it actually goes way back to the early times of the Franciscan order. Francis was a person who was always very concerned about, celebrated all creation around him, especially the animals. If you look at the stories of the early days of his life, you see that that he would often praise that the larks that were flying around his hilltop town. It's also said that in the early days, when he and his Franciscan brothers were staying in a small type hut, they allowed themselves to be displaced by a donkey who they felt needed the shelter more than they did. So you see the great respect that he had for creation. Francis wrote, of course, the famous Canticle of Creation, an ode to God's living things, in which he talks about all praise to you, O Lord, for brother and sister creatures. And so that tradition has continued even to this present day. It's a celebration of creation, all of creation, but especially at this time of the year is a celebration of animals. And as we all know, pets are very special. At different times I've said to the children at the Children's Mass, how many of you have pets, especially when we celebrate the Feast of St. Francis? And I think almost every single hand goes up. They either have dogs or cats or something similar to that. When we bless the animals here, we see almost every kind of animal that comes over. Our celebration is coming up on this Saturday. We do it on the weekend so that more people can be here with their pets. At one point, not only did we have a variety of smaller pets, but when the Marine Corps base, which is across the street, had a horse stable, they would bring over 4 or 5 or 6 horses, and we would also bless the horses. And you can see that in some of the areas in Europe where they have animals that large, that the friars will be asked to also bless those animals. And as we all know, the bond between persons and pets is a special relationship. It's kind of an eye to eye. It's a man and a woman and their dog or their cat. And animals, of course, give us, for the most part, this unconditional love, the animals that are our pets. So it's very appropriate then that we celebrate them. And this has been a big part of our tradition as Franciscans over many, many years. Today we hear a lot about creation with climate control and all of the issues. I'd have to say that we Franciscans were very much centered on the issues of climate and environment much before it became something in the papers that we read almost every day now. For us, over these last 800 years, we as Franciscans have very concerned about taking care of the earth around us and all of the creatures, the pets and all creatures, as simple as they may be. So when one thinks Franciscan, of course, one thinks of Francis, and I think most of the time we think, okay, Francis creation, Francis in the bird bath. But St. Francis was much more than just someone who stood next to a bird bath or liked birds. He was one who seriously took responsibility and asked us Franciscans and all people to take responsibility for creation around us. And so it is that this Feast of Francis, as every Feast of Francis for years and years and years, going way back, we Franciscans will put on our brown robes and white cords and go out to our different ministries throughout the United States and through the world, and we will bless animals once more.
That's wonderful. And what do you hope people walk away with after this event?
I hope that people walk away with this with a sense of the fragility of humanity, the fragility of all creation, that we can't take others for granted, that we should not take creation for granted, that we live in a very fragile world. And if anything, more recently we see with the severity of weather just how fragile that world can be with the intense flooding that's taken place, the intense hurricanes more recently that we have been experiencing, other kinds of natural phenomena. We live on a delicate planet called Earth. The creatures are delicate, human beings are delicate. And so for Franciscans, it's very important that the spirituality here is that God created all of this earth, all of the creatures, certainly us human beings, and we have a responsibility that the Lord has given us to care for each other in a very sensitive way. So I would say that's very much at the core of our Franciscan spirituality.
On another note, you've been doing this many years. Have you ever seen any mishaps?
And I'd say the only thing is sometimes when you get dogs that don't like some of the other dogs, we have to kind of, you kind of have to make sure they're separated in that. Some of the animals that we see, sometimes you go to bless them and think, ooh. I mean, I've seen everything from tarantulas to snakes to iguanas. Some obviously are very benign. Others I'm not sure I'd want to touch. but we keep our distance with the holy water. Interesting thing is for some of the pets, especially some of the dogs, when you sprinkle them with the sprinkler, the aspergus, the holy water, sometimes they kind of bark at you like somehow you're threatening them. So we've become experts, friars, at doing it just the right way so that we don't find ourselves threatening the animal.
If someone wants to join you on Saturday, where and when should they go?
Yeah, we're going to do it at 12 noon here at St. Francis, which is on Fuller Heights Road, right across from the main entrance to the Quantico Marine Corps Base.
Great. Thanks so much. And before you go, I do understand that St. Francis School has some exciting news. Would you like to share that with our listeners?
We do. We're very proud and excited about the fact that we were just chosen as a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence by the United States Department of Education, one of only 50 private schools in the United States this year. I believe there were some 360 schools that received this, but only 50 private schools. And we're delighted. It's a great tribute to our principal, Dr. Tricia Barber, our staff and our faculty, and a great tribute to the environment that they have created here, which indeed is an environment of excellence. As I mentioned in my statement for the Catholic Herald, Franciscan education is very much also a part of our tradition. I don't think most people think of that. When you think of education and religious orders, you probably most think of the Jesuits, and of course they do outstanding things in education. But the reality is that we Franciscans have been in education for over 800 years. Some of the great scholars in the Western civilization are Franciscans. So in many ways, it's great to see that our staff here and our principal and all are carrying on that great tradition of excellence. We're very proud of what has been accomplished and plan to celebrate it over these next few weeks.
Thanks so much, Father.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And happy feast to everyone.
You can read more about St. Francis School's Blue Ribbon Honors and see photos from their Francis Day celebration in our next print edition, out October 10th. Also in our next edition, we'll highlight the blessing of the animals at St. Mark Church in Vienna. Plus, we'll have some news to share about the Pope's new initiative for October. Extraordinary Missionary Month is Pope Francis's way of reminding Catholics that all of us are called to be missionaries, sharing the good news of Jesus by our actions and words. Ask your parish for a copy or go to CatholicHerald.com/subscribe to get your subscription started today. This episode was produced by Stacy Roush with production assistance from me. If you're enjoying this podcast, a quick favor, please rate and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. Thanks for listening.